work, and also it gives you updates on the current and existing information that you have on the Nile Basin.
You see, in many cases, the journalists, the first time, they may not get it right. But through continuous interaction with the scientists, they'll be able to learn a lot more, and they'll be able to learn correctly. I'm a living example of that. The way I was reporting 20 years ago is not the way I was reporting 10 years ago, and it is different from the way I was reporting 5 years ago.
It's important that we join this NileWell platform because it helps us to link between scientists and journalists and provides information to the public in a way that is really understood and information that is scientifically proven. So this is a good link that you need to join. So go NileWell.
So what are you waiting for? Create an account today by logging on to www.nilewell.org.
Okay, thank you so much all for coming in. I can see we are still coming in, but remember that this is the Wednesday, or this is the Science Wednesday, where we usually invite scientists and journalists, but also like-minded people to have a discussion about science works and basically how we can have these science works communicated. Remember that this is courtesy of NileWell, which is an online platform. And, you know, this is one way that we at InfoNile are trying to bridge the gap between scientists and journalists. And before I go on any further, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Andre Juka. And of course, I work with InfoNile, Water Journalists Africa, and you are all welcome to yet this another Science Wednesday. Today, in our midst, we have very, distinguished gentlemen that will be presenting to us. We have Daniel Abowe, who is also one of the leading scientists in Uganda, especially when it comes to working with various organizations that are into conservation, climate change, environment, and natural resource management. So just a small bit about Daniel. Daniel is an experienced scientist in biodiversity conservation, climate change, environment, and natural resource management. He's also an expert in conflict resolution and management, plus also livelihood improvement and natural resource governance. Currently, he's based at the Uganda National Council of Science and Technology, and of course, spearheading the institution capacity building for the implementation of the Nagoya Protocol on access of genetic resources and benefit sharing project in Uganda. Daniel has also worked with various organizations that Accord in full, which is Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment. He has also worked with the Civil Society Coalition on Oil and Gas. He has also worked with NEMA, which is the National Environmental Management Authority here in Uganda. Daniel has also worked with the Uganda Wildlife Conservation Society, and also he has been part of some projects with Jane Gundel Institute. So a very good welcome to this yet another science webinar or discussion. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. But also another friend of ours who is joining us today, who will be presenting, is none other than Christopher Bendana. Christopher Bendana is a Ugandan freelance journalist, particularly writing science, and his works have appeared in Uganda's leading dailies like The New Vision. He has also featured, his works have also featured internationally, for example, in the in outlets like Science, Nature, and of course, Thomson Reuters Foundation. Bendana Christopher has interests that range from climate change, conservation, biodiversity, and agriculture, but also innovation linking to all public policy. He was awarded the Best Print Population Media Award by the National Population Council of Uganda. That was in 2019. And that was for his story that was entitled Equality, Women Decry Gaps Between Policy and Reality. This story was published in the New Vision. Christopher, we are glad to have you here, and same applies to Daniel. Thank you so much. However, for you who is just joining in, I must tell you that we are live, that's on YouTube, and also feel free to invite your colleagues using the link that will be provided in the chat. And of course, as we go on, remember this is a webinar that is made to have journalists first and foremost pick something that they could write about. So we imagine that after this, people should be able to write some stories about this discussion. But also it's one way of trying to encourage scientists and journalists to work together in formulating stories, but also communication pieces. Without going any further ado, allow me to introduce now Daniel. Daniel, please, you can come in, and yeah, you have 15 minutes. And after that, we shall listen in from Bendana, and after that, we shall have some, answer and question time. And then after that, we shall have the quiz where we usually win some bit of goodies. Daniel, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aijuka Andrew. I hope you are able to see my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, most definitely. But I don't know whether it is on my side. We have a gray, I think. First, go to the second slide and I see whether it will persist. It still persists. There is a gray icon. If you look at your first slide, there is a gray icon.
Gray icon, where is it?
Yeah. Maybe you can first stop sharing and reshare again for purposes of having it a little bit clear.
Okay. How is it now?
Now we have two of them coming in. I don't know. What you can do,
Andrew, try coming back on. Try sharing, Andrew, yourself again and get out.
Let me first stop sharing.
Daniel, open the slide and then see, and then share while the slide is open. See if it will be a little bit better.
Okay. How is it now?
It's still having the patches. What you can do is send me your presentation, then I share it from my. Thank you.
Okay.
Daniel, you're on mute.
Yes, Andrew was saying that you check if you've already received it.
Hey, Daniel.
Yes, please.
Maybe to sort it out, you can try closing the other programs on your computer. Oh.
Daniel, I haven't yet received it.
Hey, Andrew, please check your email.
Yes, is it there now? Because I've already
Yes,
sent.
now it is there. Now it is there. I have it now.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. As Andrew has mentioned, I'm Daniel Abowe, and he has given a full introduction. So I'm one of the NileWell fellow who was paired with a journalist who will introduce himself later. And I'm going to take you through a topic on climate change, adaptation, and primates conservation in the Budongo Bugoma privately owned forests. Andrew, you can go to the next slide. So this Budongo Bugoma corridor is found in the Albertine Rift. And the Albertine Rift is a very big area that is so rich in biodiversity. And this particular corridor is located in the western parts of Uganda between two central forest reserves, and that is Budongo and Bugoma. And as conservationists know, the Albertine Rift has very high biodiversity statistics. It has so many key biodiversity areas, around 90%, 52% of bird species, and around 39% of mammals in Africa. And then this very corridor has numerous water catchment areas that provide water that flows in a parallel drainage pattern to Lake Albert. And then, of course, Lake Albert, we all know that it is connected to River Nile. So it forms part of the catchment area for the Nile. And when it comes to, the loss of forests within this corridor, where we still have a substantial number of private forest owners, we see the area losing 3.2% forest cover. That is on an annual basis, and then losing over 310,000 hectares of forests that were recorded in 2021. And then we see community in this area vulnerable to, climate change impacts that affects agriculture, yet majority of them, over 83%, depending on nature to grow their crops. And then the research that was carried out was meant to understand corridor conservation efforts and climate change adaptation adaptation strategies in the corridor. And this, of course, was meant to help boost conservation in the area, the biodiversity, but also build resilience to climate change. And the reason for this research, Andrew, you can go to the next slide on the problem statement, was that conservation organizations under the Northern Albertine Rift Conservation Group have piloted and demonstrated numerous conservation strategies, but these have been not well adopted. And yet we see so many other threats to biodiversity in the area, including oil and gas development activities, habitat fragmentation, that have all strained the biodiversity in the area. And of course, when this happens, we see communities getting issues, especially in regard to, having high levels of poverty, having, ecosystem services diminishing, which play a key role to humanity. And the research was, meant to understand why these conservation strategies aren't widely adopted, and of course the resulting challenges for primate species and climate change adaptation. The general objective for this research was to assess forest conservation and climate change adaptation strategies used by conservation NGOs in the corridor. And then we specifically documented conservation and climate change adaptation strategies used by conservation NGOs and analyzed private forest owners' attitudes toward this conservation of corridor private forests. And then the third one was to assess primate species diversity in the private forests within the corridor. The area that was studied is right there. As you can see on the map, there are big protected areas, of course, including Bugoma, including Budongo. And then we have others like Bujawe, Wambabia, Mukani. But between them, we see numerous forests. And those are the corridor forests that were studied. And the specific areas that were studied are circled in red. If you can see, there are 4 parishes: Birungu, Kibanjwa, Kidoma, and Monteme. And these were picked from 2 sub-counties, one sub-county called Kitova in Hoima and another sub-county called Kiziranfumbi in Kikube districts of Western Uganda. When it comes to data collection, data was both qualitative and quantitative, where we interviewed 206 households, carried out 8 focus group discussions. We did interview 20 key informants and did a primate species survey. The primate species survey was conducted through reconnaissance walks in the 4 parishes to observe signs of primate species presence and the habitat conditions. And then these were also surveyed through direct and indirect methods, where direct observation of species was carried out, as well as signs of presence, and the recordings were done at 250 meters or whenever sightings were made. There is a map that guided the survey right there, which you can see, and it shows how movement for the survey to determine the primate species was done in the 4 parishes. And then these are social demographics for the study. We looked at gender, we looked at age of respondents, education level, occupation, settlement duration in the area, and the land size owned by every household. When it comes to results, and of course, starting with the forest conservation and climate change adaptation strategies used by NGOs, tree planting and forest monitoring came out prominently. Then incentivization and other agricultural livelihoods under incentivization, that is where we find like business savings groups and other livelihood options that are given to forest owners by conservation NGOs. Then conservation awareness creation and sensitization meetings that are carried out by conservation NGOs, conservation farming and climate smart agriculture. These are meant to sustain productivity by ensuring that the soils do not get exhausted or they do not lose fertility. Then payment for ecosystem services and reducing emissions from forest degradation and deforestation programs, conservation research on climate change adaptation and private forests, and conservation association models. These include private forest owners associations and saving groups. So with this result, we also noted that when you combine these conservation strategies, the benefits or the achievement of conservation objectives is enhanced. What were the most preferred climate change adaptation strategies? So out of getting all of the climate change adaptation strategies employed by conservation NGOs, we determined that the most preferred were tree planting, as you can see on the figure, it's at 65%. Then we had conservation farming and climate smart agriculture, conservation sensitization on climate change adaptation strategies and practices, and forest conservation associations or groups. So as I have already mentioned, an integrated approach was highly preferred, where you combine some of these conservation initiatives to ensure that you achieve better results in conserving private forests. Then there are the next slide, there are development initiatives that are supported by conservation NGOs in the Budongo Goma corridor. And these have included education support, health services, job creation, water provision, tree farming, as you can see, with the tree farming still featuring as the most dominant development initiative that has been supported by conservation NGOs in the BBC. Next, the reasons for low adoption to NGOs implemented initiatives. So forest owners pointed out several reasons, and some of them were noted, as you can see in the figure. Low sensitization effort and turn up featuring prominently. Then population increase, as we well know, in areas of Western Uganda, the population has been on the rise, and the Albertine Rift has also been affected by so many immigrations, also others attracted by activities like oil and gas and other economic, initiatives that are taking place in the area. Then negative attitudes towards NGOs due to lack of facilitation. Sometimes these private forest owners assume that when initiatives are started, they should be sustained. But in most cases, projects are time-bound, and so they are not sustained to the expectations of forest owners. Next, communities' contribution to forest and primate conservation were also highlighted, and that is the way communities or private forest owners are contributing through so many ways. They are planting and taking care of trees, which is the highest bar. Then when you look at the second bar, it is involvement in decision making about conservation. So private forest owners are also involved, sustainable engagement to, all levels, and then others include abiding with conservation laws and guidelines, providing security around forests, or ensuring that their private forests are well protected. Results to these are for the second objectives on attitudes and perceptions. We did find out that forest owners' involvement is at 73.3%. That is as per the number of people who responded to our questionnaires, while 26.7 were not involved. Then there are also negative perceptions, mainly driven by human-wildlife conflicts and loss of forest, resources. And of course, where there are primate species, human-wildlife conflicts are bound to happen. We also have other challenges where we noted that primates are being hunted for food, and there are also people who are cutting down trees, some of them used as, nesting trees for primates. And of course, all of these, positive attitudes can be enhanced through greater inclusion in decision making and addressing human-wildlife conflicts. So these are the results, and objective 2. This also continues where there is a figure, and you can go to the slide with the pie chart. Ranking of the importance of primates conservation, you can see a big number, 59.6%, who strongly agreed, who agreed, and then those who strongly agreed were 18%, and of course that figure is well, elaborated there. The next slide on the benefits of having healthy private forests in the BBC. It appeared that communities are aware of the benefits of healthy forests, especially the private forest owners, and they gave so many reasons, so many benefits, including pollination of plants, sources of medicinal plants, building materials, water catchment protection, climate modification. All of these came out, including conserving wildlife. And of course, there are others who indicated that one of the benefits is getting game meat and then getting firewood. And of course, some of these relate to threats to wildlife conservation in the corridor. And then the challenges associated with conserving private forests were also highlighted. And these are also, as seen in the figure, damage of property and crops by wildlife. This relates to human-wildlife conflicts, human harassment by wildlife, disease transmission. Those are some of the challenges associated with having private forests within the areas where people stay. And then results for objective 3 on primate species diversity are also presented right there. You can see 7 primate species that were observed during the reconnaissance works. And these include red-tailed monkeys at 371. This means that they were 371 countings or sightings of red-tailed monkeys in the area, then black and white colobus monkeys, olive baboons, vervet monkeys at 100 sightings, gray-cheeked mangabees at 25 sightings, chimpanzees that were sighted directly were 6, while only 38 chimpanzee nests were sighted. Then blue monkeys were 20, and these were sighted during the surveys. As you can see on the right-hand side, there is a picture, there is a map that shows the spatial distribution of chimpanzees. That diagram is for the chimpanzee. And when you look in the map, that is how chimpanzees and the chimpanzee nests were spatially distributed in the study area. And then here in the next slide, we also have other species, 6 of them, because as I mentioned, 7 were cited, and the first one being chimpanzees, which we've covered in the previous slide. So here we have 6 species, and these include red-tailed monkeys, which is on the top left part of the map, then black and white colobus monkeys, top right part of the map, olive baboons in the middle left, vervet monkeys in the middle right, then gray-cheeked mongoose in the bottom left, and blue monkeys in the bottom right. So I put pictures of these species for easy identification. Next, still on results, you will wonder how we counted all of these number of species, or how these sightings were made. But the total distance that was walked was 109.3 kilometers, and this was walked in 23 reconnaissance walks, and this was at an average distance of 4.75 kilometers. And Kidoma is one of the parishes, had 34.6 kilometers walked, Munteme 11.5 kilometers, Kibanja 26.6, and Virungu 36.6 kilometers. And then when it comes to diversity, we saw high diversity that was noted in the Kidoma parish, and the encounter rate, which means the number of sightings made per species, or the overall species per kilometer, was at 13.9 sightings. And this was in Kidoma parish, which is close to 2 central forest reserves, and one being Bugoma. Sorry, Bugoma is the only central forest reserve, but there is another forest reserve called Wambabia, which is also in close proximity. And so this also is part of the evidence that these primates are using these forest corridors to move from one protected area to the other in the Budongo Bugoma corridor. And then, of course, when it comes to strategy effectiveness, we realize that economic incentives combined with conservation efforts will improve forest conservation outcomes. And then community engagement. If you actively engage communities and they participate, this increases support and effectiveness of conservation initiatives. Then the species richness, high diversity and distribution of primates within the Budongo Bugoma corridor, as you have already noted, means that conservation efforts are justified, and that we have substantial, species that are outside traditional conservation areas or traditional protected areas. Then challenges, of course, notwithstanding, we have, forest degradation, which has continued, and insufficient adoption of initiatives, which results from competing land uses. Still on the discussion, conservation NGOs development initiatives boost private forest owners' income in return to, conservation, restoration of ecosystems, building resilience to climate change. So it is important that these development initiatives are boosted in the Budongo Bugoma corridor. And then adoption of conservation initiatives is still inadequate due to the reasons that I mentioned, why people are not adopting these conservation initiatives, including lack of sustainability due to low funding and having, projects that are on and off. And then occupation of private forest owners is vital. And of course, poverty fuels deforestation and habitat degradation. You will all agree with me that in communities that are predominantly poor, it is hard to protect these natural resources because those are the only sources of livelihoods. And then still the next slide on discussion, private forest owners' attitudes and perceptions towards primate species conservation determine the success of conservation interventions. If they have good attitudes and perceptions, then it is very easy to adopt to conservation interventions that are brought by conservation stakeholders. Then involvement of community members and forest owners in the design of conservation interventions is critical. This is very clear. Then increasing conservation support, raising awareness, creating sustainable livelihoods also positively improves people's attitudes. Then threats to forest conservation directly impact biodiversity conservation. Yes, that has been talked about. Discussions on part of objective 3 on primate species diversity, the spatial distribution and encounter rates changed when you consider the results of 2018 and the results of 2023 when this research was carried out. The red-tailed and black and white colobus monkeys were the most cited in both years when research that relates to primate survey was carried out. And then Kidoma Parish had the highest number of primates cited due to proximity to central forest reserves. Then also the study emphasized the protection of primate habitats from logging and agriculture. Within the area, most people have adopted growing of sugar canes because of presence of sugar factories around, and part of Bugoma Central Forest Reserve was also given away for this cause. So we see the habitats becoming fragmented. We see primates losing their home. Then the main threats to primate species and biodiversity are habitat loss. This has already been spoken to. And then on side of conclusions, conservation strategies like tree planting and awareness campaigns are essential, but need to be supplemented with livelihood and economic benefits for conservation NGOs to achieve long-term success. Then positive attitudes and perceptions towards biodiversity, conservation are being undermined by human-wildlife conflicts in the Budongo-Bugoma corridor. Then there is high primate diversity, indicating the need for continued habitat protection beyond protected areas. And as you can see, if these interventions or conservation NGOs were not prioritizing this corridor, I don't think what we still have there would be there. I think all the private forests would not be in the Budongo-Bugoma corridor, and that means that we would not be having these species of primates in the area, and the water catchment areas would also be, degraded. They would be polluted, and so the resulting effects would not be good for the human beings, for people who rely on nature for their livelihoods. As I come to the end, I have 3 recommendations. Number 1, integrate conservation interventions with incentives and livelihood activities. And this is where private forest owners talked of having revolving funds within their private forest owners associations to be able to boost their livelihoods and continue supporting conservation. Then conservation farming and tree planting. And then address human wildlife conflicts to foster positive community attitudes and perceptions. This can be addressed by introducing compensation schemes and ensuring that whoever loses their property to wild animals or to primates that are inhabiting the private forests in the Budongo-Buguma corridor is compensated. The Uganda Wildlife Authority in Uganda, we have the Wildlife Act of 2019 that speaks to compensation, but implementation has not taken place. Then use of scientific studies to guide primate conservation strategies. Conservation efforts should be guided by scientific research findings and routine species monitoring to be able to achieve better conservation results. And this comes to the end of my presentation. I thank NileWell and InfoNile for the opportunity that I've been given to be one of your fellows, and I so much appreciate the trainings that have taken place ever since we started this co-production program. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much indeed, Daniel. That was awesome. And friends, remember that you are attending, of course, the NileWell Science Wednesday Cafe, courtesy of the NileWell platform. This is a platform that is meant to, bridge the gap between scientists and journalists. And as Daniel mentioned in the first lines, as he was presenting, Daniel was paired with another Ugandan journalist known as Christopher Bendana. And at this point, I would love Christopher to come in and introduce himself fully. And then he can also tell us how he was able to come up with the story working along with Daniel. Thank you so much. Christopher, please come in.
Good afternoon, everyone, colleagues. Daniel, thank you for your wonderful presentation. My name again, I'm Christopher Bendana. I'm a science freelance journalist. I'm based here in Kampala, Uganda's capital city. I also run my own website, Science Now Magazine. The story I did is from one of Daniel's recommendation, the recommendation of alternative livelihoods as a means of effective environmental conservation. I'd been attending webinars organized by the Water Ministry, and in one of their presentation, they had they presented a successful story of alternative livelihoods in Kabare, where they had given money to former wetland encroachers. So in my discussions with Abowe, when I heard about the recommendation of alternative livelihoods and taking into account how Uganda has been losing its wetland up to only now 10%, I thought that I would use that recommendation to highlight the success of this alternative livelihood story. So, Andrew, I think I've already alluded to this. So the story I explored is, it is a story I published on my website, and it was also republished by InfoNile. The headline is Environment Cooperatives Build Alternative Livelihoods in Protected Areas. And for this case, I visited the restored wetland in Maziba Kabare district, which is in southwestern Uganda, 400 kilometers from the capital here. I went, did observe, and indeed, part of the wetland had been restored. I was also able to interview some of the beneficiaries of from the program, former wetland encroachers who had been given money and training in alternative livelihoods. Some had gone into poultry farming, some into piggery, and others into cattle keeping. So I went, interviewed, also talked to local district officials, did some online research, including alternative livelihood studies in other countries, including in Tanzania. And I was able to come up with a story. And taking into account that part of the pairing included training in multimedia, I was also able to include graphs and graphs in the story. The story is on the InfoNile website. So after I've done my story, my conclusions are that as journalists, we can get story from research findings and working with scientists. And my travels and experience talking to beneficiaries alluded the fact that many of these encroachers, whether wetlands or forests or other protected areas, know the harm they are doing to the environment, but it is a matter of economic survival. Many of these are encroaching on the protected areas for their subsistence. It's the only option where they can derive a living. So if organization and government can provide best skilling in some of these alternative livelihoods like poultry farming, beekeeping, it surely can be an alternative of income to these people. And once they can see that they can get a better income, surely they will not encroach on the protected areas again. But my experience is that these former encroachers need training and support throughout the whole value chain. They need training in understanding the value and role of the environment ecosystem. They need training in how they can use the new acquired skills to improve their livelihoods. They need training in how they can do marketing of their products. They also need training on adding value on some of these products they have developed. So the skilling project shouldn't only remain on giving the basic skill. It should be throughout the whole value chain. Andrew, we can go to the next slide. So after interviewing and doing this online research, I strongly agree with Daniel's recommendation that alternative livelihoods can save some of these protected areas. Only as I've said, that we need, if we are giving this basic skilling in alternative livelihood, it should be throughout the value chain, from the production side up to the marketing side. And there is my other recommendation is that they should be continuous monitoring, because some of these projects are successful or are still successful because of funding from the sponsoring agencies. So there should be continuous monitoring even after the sponsoring agency has left, to see that really these alternative livelihoods is the best option. And once you have given it former encroachers or protected areas, it can give them a better alternative rather than going back to the protected area. I thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Bendana, for that wonderful but brief, submission. And maybe to just ask you, how did you find, the whole thing of working with the scientist, or even picking a story lead from a scientist abstract, or even recommendations?
The good thing of working with the scientists is that much of their work is based on scientific fact and evidence. So things to do with accuracy, things to do with trust. Once you have their voice, the story is usually much accepted by the audience. So once they have evidence, and as journalists, we like depending on evidence, because once you have evidence, you have a complete story.
Thank you so much, Bendana. And colleagues, like how I said, this is, of course, the NileWell Science Wednesday Cafe. Please feel free to put down your questions that you may have for our guests today. And that's, of course, the scientist, who happens to be Daniel Abowe, and Christopher Bendana. And of course, just to remind you that I'm sitting in for Deli Sive, who will be, of course, taking on other sessions later on. But of course, maybe if I could ask you, Daniel, in your recommendations, you stated that we should look at adaptation measures that scientists have recommended. How about the indigenous knowledge? While attending COP, the indigenous knowledge came really up so much. Should we also consider the indigenous knowledge that people have when it comes to the conservation of these protected areas?
Oh, yes, Mr. Aijuka, indigenous knowledge is very, very critical in conservation. And as you've noted, that it has become critical in the COP everywhere. The projects that are coming up, especially from, that are funded by United Nations Environment Program through, donors like Global Environment Facility, consider so much indigenous knowledge. And it is also a component of the access and benefits sharing program, which is, of course, spearheaded by the Nagoya Protocol, a third objective of the Convention on Biological Diversity. So aspects of indigenous knowledge are very critical in promoting or advancing conservation initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then, of course, as we also go ahead, please, in the chat, they have put the link for the story that Bendana did using some of the recommendations that Daniel had pointed out in his research. Maybe, Bendana, just one more question for you. How did you find the working with the scientists? How did you find that relationship, working together with the scientists? How did it come with you?
Of course, it was an interesting and educative experience. Sometimes you think that you know a lot about a subject because you have reported about it for 10 years. But when you read their work and you talk to them and they are telling you this is not a monkey, this is this, and then it's when you understand that learning from scientists is a continuous process. So I learned a lot, and then it has motivated me to be a continuous learner.
Any questions, please, from the people attending? I'll be glad to take in your questions. But maybe if I can come to you, Daniel, do you think this protected area, the one that you just talked about, the Budongo, and you said Budongo and something, I don't get the other name, but do you think who is supposed to basically fund these incentives or initiatives? Because in most cases, government will say they don't have money. NGOs will say we have maybe small monies to go maybe for up to 2 years or 3 years. In your research as a scientist, have you researched also where this money should be coming from and who should be responsible of giving these people that are living in these places these incentives so that they can stop, destroying the environment?
Thank you, Andrew, for that question. I'll, of course, begin by mentioning that wherever we are, like the entire country of Uganda, had these species. If you consider like 50 years ago, at least every area had like some of these forests that were privately owned and where some of these primate species lived. But because of, population pressure, because of, competing land uses, most of these habitats have been wiped out. So why the attention on the Budongo Goma corridor? This is because this area has continued to inhabit these species, much as, most of the other areas have, done deforestation and had all of the habitats wiped out. But this area, which is critical, which is a biodiversity hotspot, continues to harbor these species. And the reason for that is that there has been enhanced conservation effort within the area. So why do we have this enhanced conservation effort? It is because conservationists know that there are very many species. There is a high concentration of species, which species feed into, the statistics that are reported about the Albertine Rift. So when it comes to where can we get the funding for conservation initiatives in this area, you realize that climate change finance is available. And there are so many initiatives that have been put in place to ensure that we get this funding. And how does it work? Initiatives like Red Plus work by ensuring that areas that have forests are protected and the owners of these forests keep benefiting from the forests that they are protecting. So these initiatives are in place. We have the national determined contributions. We have this Red Plus I have talked about. We have other, principles like the Poruta Pays principle. We have developed countries or industrialized nations buying carbon credits. And how do they buy carbon credits? By ensuring that forests in areas where they are keep standing, so that as they continue to pollute in their homeland, they have sinks or they have storage for their carbons in areas that have these forests. So all of those are sources of finance for climate change related initiatives. And then when it comes to biodiversity, biodiversity also has its own finance mechanisms in place. Of course, we know the global biodiversity frameworks that are in place, and all those are meant to ensure that at least there is a basket that helps to collect this fund and put it where it will yield the highest conservation value, and the BBC is one of them. And of course, that is why you see many organizations, the Wildlife Conservation Society, Worldwide Fund for Nature, the Jane Goodall Institute, Eco Trust, Chimpanzee Trust, Flora and Fauna International, all concentrating their effort in that particular area of Uganda.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Maybe in just a few words, this is a question from Henry Owino, who is a journalist from Kenya, and is asking, how do you see conservancy ecosystem in the next 5 years?
I understand what a conservancy is, and I know that, of course, we have conservancies in Kenya, and in Uganda, some conservancies have been piloted, like in the Lake Mburo landscape, in some upper parts of, Murchison Falls National Park. some conservancies have been piloted, but within that specific area, we have not had, conservancies. We've not had an organization that has come up with such an initiative, but I think it is a very good conservation approach that would help to keep the private forests in the Budongo Bugoma corridor standing.
Friends, we are running out of time, and I can see it is right now that the questions are coming in. I'll just take only this last one from Lino, who is also a South Sudanese journalist, and he has two questions. But of course, he's asking, how were you able to get data? Because from Lino's experience, it is very hard to collect data, especially from government and also some of these agencies. And maybe the second question is so still about the challenges. How were you able to overcome these challenges in the field as you are coming up with this story? I think that should go to Christopher. Then the first one, Daniel, you can answer that.
Yes, that's a good question, Lino. How was I able to get data? First of all, I would like to let you know that in the area where I worked it was in privately owned forests, and these are forests that are riverine in nature but owned by households. And because of being able to work with the conservation NGOs that have operated in the area, I got to know that there are private forest owners associations at each parish level. So these private forest owners associations at parish level have their leadership. So in designing my methodology, I, of course, included a preliminary visit where I visited the leadership of these private forest owners associations, and then the government stakeholders, the government institutions in charge at the district, sub-county level, and then LOC2, local council 2 level, as well as the local council 1 levels, to ensure that they are all aware of what was happening and how I was doing it. So after getting all of these people know what I was going to do, it became quite easier for me to collect data from households. It became easier for me to collect data through focus group discussions. I was able to interview key informants from conservation NGOs, government departments, the leadership at the sub-county, and the private forest owners, as well as conduct the primates survey within the private forests that were not under the government's management. Thank you.
Okay,
thank you so much. Yeah, you can continue, Christopher.
For a brief one, much of this data on environment degradation is government data. It is online. NEMA produces reports after 2 years, so the reports are online. Wetland loss was there. But how I gather the information, I'm part of the monthly group that attends this monthly water webinars organized by the Minister of Water. So I have good rapport with them. So I talked to the commissioner who linked me to the chairman of the beneficiaries group. So I was able to make initial contact. I had a few questions before I went, then get a deep background. So when I went, I'd already done like 50% of the story. I had just gone to observe what was on the ground, see the success stories, if the piggery were there or the fruits were there. So I didn't get any challenge because the water ministry, of course, was interested in highlighting it as a success project so that it can be replicated in other parts of the country. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Daniel, you have one more question from Ram. Then, friends, I think any other questions? We are going to share Daniel's email, and also we are going to share Christopher's email so that you can get in touch with them. But also remember that on NileWell, that's the online platform, you can find these two gentlemen there if you have an account. And the question goes to Daniel. Daniel, Ram asks that, did you find anything like, policies and laws intended to protect the forest being implemented, purportedly being abused by the so-called big wigs in government? Did you find that? Did you find any elements of such cases whereby big wigs in government were now going against the laws that actually they put in place to protect these forests? And how can this be addressed if at all these cases were seen?
Yes, the question that Ram raises was also critical in my study. And these cases came out most especially when it came to, respondents telling me about some of the protected areas and what was happening. Of course, there are cases of logging, trees by the would-be, protectors of, these central forests, and also you do not know why. It is hard to know why most of the laws are not implemented at the local level in ensuring that the environment is protected, and in ensuring that the natural resources, for instance, rivers, wetlands, are protected. Because ideally, like for these big rivers, it would be the role of the government to protect the catchment areas, to protect the buffer zone of a river, and ensure that it has the natural trees, it has the vegetation, and it is not degraded. But because of, should I say, reluctance or complacency, we end up having all of these natural resources degraded. So I think the solution lies in having these policies in place, enforced to the maximum, or having government institutions that are willing to work and ensure that whatever is written in the guidelines for conserving the environment is enforced to the dot. And there we would have some of these natural resources protected without having to go through other ways of looking for funding to have these initiatives in place to protect these natural resources.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you so much, Christopher, for such a vibrant but also brilliant observations and also submissions. For now, colleagues, we are going into a very crucial part of our cafe, and that's the trivia. So the trivia is brought to you by Christopher Cobell. And Chris, please, you can take over. Remember, after Chris giving us the trivia questions, we will have Delicate announcing the winner of the day and also closing down our cafe. So Christopher, please take over.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Well done on the moderation. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Chris, for the Science Wednesday webinar cafe. It's been so insightful. Yeah, okay. So quickly to our trivia questions. Just go into your chat and write your answers like we usually do. The first one to have the answers wins the question or wins the response. So we count from there. The one with the most points gets the prizes. Okay. All right, let's start straight away. Which districts are Bundongo, Bugoma Forest located? Which districts are Bundongo, Bugoma Forests located? Chris, you're not allowed to respond. I see the closest one we have is everyone has Hoima, but there's one more. Yes. Atim Nancy. I see you have some answers. Atim Nancy. Atim Nancy, you've got that one.
Okay.
Yeah. It's Hoima and Chikube district. All right, second, what's the most popular forest conservation strategy? What is the most popular forest conservation strategy? What is the most popular forest conservation strategy? Robert Moore has got it. Because it's tree planting and forest monitoring. The answer is tree planting and forest monitoring. So Robert is the closest. All right. Number 3, list at least 4 reasons for low adaptation of conservation initiatives. List at least 4 reasons for low adoption of conservation initiatives. List at least 4 reasons for low adoption of conservation initiatives. Just 4. Kakima, I see you on track. You have 1.
Friends, the instructions were list at least 4.
At least 4 reasons for low adoption of conservation initiatives.
The list should be 4.
At least 4, just 4. Kakima, you have 1, lack of sensitization, which is good. Low sensitization, which is all right. Okay, so Andrew, what do we do when?
Yeah, I think we have Ram. This is a thing of who can type faster. So I think I think Ram Chikama gets that one. But I see also there.
I think Robert is also there. Robert is correct. Robert gets this one.
Okay, Robert.
So Robert gets this one. Okay. Okay. All right. Number 4. Name at least 3 species that are sparsely distributed. 3 species of monkeys, So name at least 3 species that are sparsely distributed. 3 species of monkeys. Just 3. Name at least 3 species of monkeys that are sparsely distributed. This is from Daniel's research. Lino, I don't think so. No, not chimpanzee. List at least 3 species of monkeys that are sparsely distributed. Lino, let's try again. Okay, this one I think is a bit tricky. This one is tough.
I say Robert Money talking of mountain gorillas.
This one is tough. Let's. I think we can 5 seconds and we pass on this one. This one is tough. All right. red-tailed. Yeah. We have someone here, black and white. That's good. Henry Owino, well done. Thank you. So Henry Owino takes this one.
Okay, the man
Henry
from
Owino takes this one. Well done. Now, lastly, number 5. Apart from the red-tailed monkey, which other primate species were most cited in 2018 and 2003? Apart from the red-tailed, which other primate species was most cited in 2018 and 2003?
Robert says chimpanzee, is it?
No, it's not chimpanzee. Robert, you like the chimpanzee today. Apart from the red-tailed monkey, which other primate species were most cited in 2018, and 2003? Henry Owino, no. Close, but no. Close, but no. Apart from the red-tailed monkey, which other primate species were most cited in 2018 and 2003?
Robert Mone, Mountain with Norway.
All right, 10 seconds, and I'll give you the answer. All right. No, Kakima, no. So the answer is the black and white colobus monkey. The black and white colobus monkey. So these questions, I think, we have a winner on each of them aside from the last one. So let Delicate tell us how we're going forward. But thank you all for your participation. Until the next Science Wednesday, it's been a pleasure. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Over to you, Delicate, please, as you give us who has won, and then, of course, you can close.
Andrew?
Yes?
If we don't have a winner, we cannot, until next
we have shared
Robert,
points today.
We have
Robert Mone, Robert had two.
Robert got
two, Atim
really?
got one, and Henry Owino got one. And the fifth
is
yes.
Okay, then it's Robert.
got two.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought they were all tying, 3 of them.
No. Yeah. Robert got number 2 and number 3. Atim got number 1, and then Henry got number 4. Then number 5, of course, we didn't have a winner. So Robert wins. Robert, thank you so much. There's greatness in everyone.
That's what I
Yeah, congratulations.
Andrew,
you can take over. Yes.
Andrew.
Yeah.
So let Robert send his payment details on this number. I've pasted it in the chat.
Okay, Robert, this is a Ugandan number, so you can add 256 in case you're not in Uganda. But I believe you're in Uganda. Okay, you can send your details, and then we can see how to get back to you. Delicate, you ready? Whenever you're ready, please.
Hey, Andrew. You need me to do something?
To close down. Maybe if at all you have any communications, you can, communicate right now.
Hi, everyone. I thank you very much for making time to come for this the 16th session of our Science Wednesday. I really don't have any major communication, but just to congratulate each one of you who has made time to join us, particularly those who have come over and over again, the likes of Henry Owino, Susan Marmar, Kevin Omolo, Jane Masharia. We see you, we recognize you. We are looking at ways in which we can also be recognizing members who keep joining us over and over again. I think I've also seen Musa Juma a couple of times. So keep coming. Let's hope for the best. Thank you very much for making time for this Science Wednesday. Till next time.
Okay, thank you, friends, and bye for now. We meet next time.
All right, guys. See you next Science Wednesday.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.